All right, hello, folks. If you are a constant listener or watcher of Stopping Socialism TV, you're probably scratching your head. Why are they talking about Star Wars? Justin, explain.
Look, uh, listen, America. Um, it's been a rough few months for us here at Stopping
It really
Socialism.
has.
It's been a really disheartening few months. I mean, I'm not gonna go into all the details, but I'm gonna say I'll leave it to sort of the main talking the main primary points here, the primary points of interest. Number one, everything was cruising along really well. Our project, our website, our video channel, like everything was just exploding. It was doing really, really well going into the election. And we were really excited about everything that was happening. And then the election happened, and all of a sudden, Facebook and Google and YouTube and everybody started going nuts with the political advertising bans, and then limiting people's access to content in some cases, and causing all sorts of problems. And at first we were just told it was going to be for like a couple weeks that this stuff was going to happen. And then a couple weeks turned into, a month, because there was some uncertainty about a particular event that we're not allowed to talk about on the air. But let's just say it was a really important event that happens in the first week of November. And then it turned into from a month to 2 months. And then it finally looked like we were turning the corner. And we started investing lots of time and money and energy into Parler, because it was growing exponentially, and I think we had like 40 to 50,000 followers combined between the Justin Haskins page and the Stopping Socialism account on Parler, just within a few weeks of trying. I mean, it was amazing how quickly it was growing. And then it all fell apart. Parler fell apart, and I think a piece of me died when Parler died.
Yeah, every time we start off one of these episodes, I talk about how like we need you to help us out because Facebook and YouTube and Google, they're not doing us any favors, and that was true. But like now it's worse than that. Now it's like we can't get our content out there if we like wanted to pay to do it. So
we literally, and to give you a sense, to give you some sense of just how bad some of these bans are, I tried to advertise on one very large social media channel an ad for this channel that literally was just an American flag with text at the top that said, we need your help, please follow us. And that ad was banned for being political advertising.
right.
My personal account was banned for the same ad, for being political advertising. How is that political advertising? We tried to run an ad for a video of Ronald Reagan telling jokes, and that was banned for being political advertising. I hate to break it to the political advertising czars at these various social media companies, but Ronald Reagan is dead. He's dead.
He's been dead
He's
for
been
a
dead
while.
for a long time, okay? He's been dead for a long time. He hasn't been president in 40 years? Like 30 something years? He's not a politician anymore. He's dead. So how can it be political advertising? He's telling jokes. It's not political speech, it's jokes. And that was banned too. So after a while, we just said, you know what? Screw it. We don't care anymore. We don't care anymore from now on. We're gonna see how this all plays out. So this is, not only are we just Star Wars nerds and we just talk about this stuff all the time anyway, so we're just gonna do this because we enjoy it, but also, and we think you're gonna enjoy it too.
Yeah.
If you like Star Wars at all, stick with us. If you don't, then just get the heck out of here because you don't belong.
We're gonna put we got other videos on the channel too.
Yeah, if you're super into Predator, we'll do that next week, okay? Just let us know. We've got an endless list of movies that we
I would
really
totally like to rank the Terminator
we
movies too.
We could totally do that. And so we've just decided that, you know what? Let's just see what happens when we
like
try
a little
to
bit of an
advertise.
experiment.
It's a little bit of an experiment. We're going to see if they won't let Stopping Socialism talk about Star Wars either. because they won't let us show you Ronald Reagan telling jokes. Will they let us do Star Wars, or is that also political? I don't know.
So
we're gonna find out.
We're gonna find out. So and if this catches on, hey, maybe we'll have a little subsection of our channel that just talks about pop culture. I'm totally down with that.
Maybe the channel will become a pop culture channel. Because that's the only thing we're allowed to do.
In the comments, let us know your ranking of Star Wars. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna work from 11 up to 1, and then we'll just talk about each one of them as we go. But we'll see if YouTube and our tech overlords allow us to even promote this video. I guess we'll see. So this is just pure desperation of the part of the Stopping Socialism project right now.
Mixed with depression
a little bit. So, Justin, do you want me to start off with my least favorite Star Wars movie?
Yeah, I think we should work from least favorite up.
But do you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
You should go first, but I will warn you that if you choose the wrong movie as the worst movie, then you automatically, the rest of your list becomes irrelevant to me. There's clearly a worse movie. No, this is not the worst one.
My least favorite movie of Star Wars, okay, is Attack of the Clones. This is episode 2, Attack of the Clones, starring Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor, Natalie Portman's in there, and it is the second of the prequel trilogy, and in my opinion, it is the worst one. And obviously, I know what Justin's is going to be. It's going to be episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And we could talk about that when it comes. But my important distinction between the two is that I think that Phantom Menace has some redeeming qualities, whereas Attack of the Clones is just a slog and a half to get through, man. Like, there are some cool little action scenes here and there. But, like, outside of that, it's hard to watch in some parts. When Obi-Wan Kenobi goes to Dexter Jetson's 50s era diner, you're just like, what am I watching? Like, what is this? So
actually, I think that alien in that scene is like one of the best actors in that film. Actually, I think he does one of the best acting performances of the film.
It's probably not.
I'm being serious. I think he's not that bad. Look, Attack of the Clones is terrible. It's a terrible movie. There's no question about it. It is my second to worst. I have it second to last, so it would be number 10 for me on my list. And my reasoning behind this is everything you just said. It's not a good story. It's not a good plot. It's poorly executed. It doesn't really look very good. There are numerous just the love story between Anakin Skywalker and Natalie Portman, which goes on throughout 2 and 3, episode 2 and 3, is just hard to watch. It's just really hard to watch.
The famous "I hate sand" speech is in this movie.
Yeah, it's just really hard to watch. And the Anakin Skywalker character is oftentimes he's just so unlikable. And it's hard to and Natalie Portman is just so like pointless, really, in terms of just like she has no character. She provides really nothing to the movie other than you need to have that character in there for other reasons, for the plot and everything. But she offers nothing as an actress. She offers nothing as a character. It's just brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah, Ewan McGregor is the only saving grace of this movie. Like him doing his little detective stuff and going to different planets and trying to find out what's going on. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
But like every time you get some momentum going up behind that storyline, then it's just like another scene with Anakin and Padme, like in a field. Like it's miserable. It's miserable.
It's really bad. However, it is not worse than episode 1, which is my
so this is your number
favorite.
11 here.
Right. And the reason for that, there are several reasons for that. The first is that I actually think that the redeeming qualities in Attack of the Clones is much better, much more valuable. I think the battle scene toward the end is actually pretty solid battle scene. You know, they're in this big sort of Coliseum thing, and the Jedis show up, and they're, you know, fighting off all of these like creatures and stuff that are involved in the storyline. It gets really complicated, but I'm sure everyone here, if you're watching this far, you've seen the movie, so you know. So it's that scene's a pretty cool scene, I think. The quality of the special effects are better naturally because it's a slightly newer movie than the first one. The first one I think is just too cartoonish in a way. It's like you're watching a cartoon at certain parts.
I think all of the
they are movies, they're all that style, but I think that the first one is the worst of the group in that sense. So for that reason as well. But in addition to that, there are some cool kind of backstory things that I think are kind of important to understand the Star Wars universe. The cloning, just the whole concept of like where these clones came from and how there's like some secret plot going on to build this clone army and all of that. I think is like mildly interesting. I don't think it's great, but it's mildly interesting. One, however, is like, to me, there's nothing mildly interesting about this movie. It is horrible from the very beginning all the way until the end. I find absolutely no redeeming parts of the movie at all. I think Anakin, other than Darth Maul, who is great, however, totally wasted. They don't use him anywhere near enough in the movie. They kill him, kind of. We find out they didn't really kill him in a way that's just totally inexplicable, but that's a whole different thing. And Anakin Skywalker is just awful in that movie. As bad as Hayden Christensen is, that little boy Anakin is the worst. And also, of course, Jar Jar Binks, by maybe the worst character in all of the Star Wars universe. Almost certainly the worst character introduced in this movie as well. And so just like everything about this, and then it even starts, it's so boring. It's all about like a freaking trade, you know, some kind of trade embargo. Like that's how the movie starts out. It's about a dispute between a trade federation and like this republic. It's like, this is the most boring concept for a movie ever. And we're political nerds, and even we are like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, they don't even do politics right in that movie.
No, it's so bad. It's so bad. Right down to the, you know, weird, like, Japanese racist Asian alien trade federation people, which is just hard to watch and weird. I just hate it. I hate it from beginning to end. And I every once in a while, every couple of years, I go through the whole Star Wars thing. I watch them all because I do like Star Wars. I do it every couple of years. I admit it. It is a guilty pleasure of mine. And I always watch all of them, including these terrible ones. But man, they are, if I never have to watch Phantom Menace again, I think I'll be, that's a good life. Never having seen this movie.
Okay,
again.
So the pod race is pretty cool. I mean, that's like a meme at this point, me saying something like that. And then the score and the final battle scene, that last, like the climax of the movie. Now there's like 4 things going on that kind of gets like a little on top of each other. One of those being Jar Jar Binks, just like Mr. Magooing himself through a giant battle, is kind of ridiculous. But there are components of that the last third of that movie that I think puts it over Attack of the Clones. Now, I'm splitting hairs a little bit. I'm not saying this is substantially better. I'm sure you can catch me on certain days where I would totally flip-flop these two. But in my opinion, I think Attack of the Clones is worse.
When was the last time you saw these?
I'm sure I've watched them all in the last year.
Okay. All right.
All right. So we basically have the same bottom 2. Let's go to number 9. What's number 9 on your list?
Number 9 is, we just go right in order. 1, 2, and 3. 3 is next. Revenge of the Sith, I think, is bad. We don't even need to really go into it. I think it's bad in my opinion for all the reasons that the other 2 are bad. It's just slightly not as bad as those ones, essentially.
Yep.
So
I think there's a little bit more of a leap between the bottom 2 and this one. They're still in my lower tier of movies. But there are some redeeming qualities of this, like the twist, even though it's not really a twist because we all know it's going to happen because we've seen Star Wars before in our lives. It's a pretty cool concept, and it's a little bit heavier than the other 2. but it still suffers from all those cartoonish qualities and, just kind of stilted acting and just not a well executed film.
No.
So yeah, I think we're in agreement here. The prequel trilogy makes up the bottom of our list. I'm curious to see how you rank some of these other ones, but
yeah. But before we move on from these three, I will say this. One thing I do sort of like about these three, if we're going to try to tie some sort of political angle to all of this, is that, which is not easy to do, I understand that. But I do like how, really, what is the moral of those three stories? I mean, what's the overarching moral of those three stories? It's that if you centralize power too much and you put, too much power in the hands of too few people, they will abuse it and they will continue to expand their power, and they will use as their justification what? Safety and security and peace and all these lofty ideals to seize power away from people and to continue to expand their own power and authority in the world. That is really one of the overarching themes of those movies.
Oh yeah.
It's not like you have to read into it. I mean, they bash
pretty
you over the head with it. It's very heavy-handed. And so if you're like a libertarian and you're watching that, you're just nodding along the whole time with those parts of it. There's that one quote there from what's her name? From Natalie Portman.
So this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause.
That's right. And so I think it's democracy, not liberty, but I could be wrong. But the point is this. She is, as one of the main likable characters, what is she saying? She's saying, look at all these people celebrating the end of their freedom and they don't even realize that they're doing it.
Yeah, no,
and that's great. I actually really appreciate that. So.
There's a lot of aspects of the prequel trilogy that I got to give them a hand to. The world building and all of that, the idea of showing like a planet that's 100% like a giant city is like something we haven't seen in Star Wars. It's just the execution of the movies were just so bad.
The writing too. It's not even just the execution. I mean, the writing is really bad. It's just not good writing.
Right.
So yeah. So anyway.
All right. So moving on. So my number 8 here. So going from basically polar opposites, we went from the episodes 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to jump all the way to episode 9. The Rise of Skywalker. This is the latest movie that came out, episode 9. This is with our heroes Rey and Finn and Bo Dameron. And now my kind of review of this is always hinged on the other 2 movies of this sequel trilogy, where I felt like excited for episode 7. I thought it set the table really well. I felt like the ball was fumbled in 8. So when I left 7, I was excited. When I left the theaters watching 8, I was mad. When I left the theaters after watching 9, I felt nothing. Because this movie was basically, to me, nothing but fan service that didn't push forward the storyline at all. Like, it was just basically a rescue mission that, in my opinion, failed. So I really this is the one I've seen once. I've only seen it once in theaters. I've had no interest in going back and rewatching it. It left no impression on me. But I recognize that there were certain aspects just from like film crafting that was better than anything that was presented in the prequels. So where did you rank Rise of Skywalker?
Well, I think that there were some problems with 9, without question. But I pretty strongly disagree that this is the right spot for it. I don't think this is the right spot for it at all. I do think that it had some issues in the sense that it was trying to do too much in one movie. I think, though, that was because episode 8 put them in a really tough spot.
I will agree with you. Yeah.
And they had to write their way out of a pretty tough situation in episode 8. And then they were trying to wrap the whole thing up, and they had to wrap it up in a very short period of time, and it was very difficult to do. And I actually think that it's a pretty solid movie overall, but it's the most of all the Star Wars movies. It's the most like the Marvel Universe movies.
I can see
and
that.
that you go to it and it's mostly just an action movie, and there's really not much else there to it. It's mostly just an action movie.
Where'd you put it?
So I like it a lot, but I have it at 7.
So, okay, so it's not much higher than that.
Well, no, it's not. It's not that but for me, it is significantly better than my number 8.
I agree with you, and we're gonna talk about The Last Jedi pretty soon here, I suspect. But to me, it's like, yes, they were trying to salvage the disaster that was The Last Jedi, but like, I think that they introduced a whole lot of unforced errors too. Like, the biggest problem to me with this movie was there's like 12 plot lines all going at the same time, and like half of them weren't even worth putting in there. Like, did we really need to see her going to get some mystical knife or something like that? Like, it just made no sense. Strip that down to the bare bones, and you might actually have a pretty decent movie. But a lot of unforced errors, but left no impact on me, so that's why I'm putting it so low.
Yeah, I think that it fell into that trap of trying to do too much to make it a big, grand, blockbuster movie, and they kind of forgot that the 3 original Star Wars movies, 4, 5, and 6, which we haven't talked about at all, I mean, they're really, especially the first 2, are not big blockbuster type movies in the same way that these movies try to be.
Yeah, when you see 100,000 ships flying in, to fight 100,000 bad guy ships, it was just like, you're just forcing a blockbuster type spectacle.
And that's how I feel about every Marvel movie. And so that's why I said, to me, it was very Marvel-like. But to me, without question, and I actually watched 8 not that long ago, and I really, really, really think that 8 belongs in this bottom 4 group. And I think this bottom 4 group deserves to be separated from the rest of the group. I actually think these are all bad movies, these bottom 4.
Sure.
And it hurts me to say that, because there are parts of this movie, The Last Jedi, that are really great movies.
So this is your number 8.
Yes, some of the best scenes in all of the Star Wars universe, and all 11 movies, occur in episode 8. Luke Skywalker fooling everybody at the end with Kylo Ren, and they're shooting all those laser beams at him, and turns out he's just basically like hologram Luke Skywalker. Yeah. That's an amazing scene. The battle scene with Kylo and Rey, where they kill Snoke, all that is the best battle scene in any of the movies, I think. And so it's got really good parts. Any part with Kylo and Rey, I think, is really good. But the rest of the movie is so poorly written and so nonsensical, and there is so much political correctness ham-fisted into the movie. And just like the Rose character, and just everything about the Rose character with Finn, those two together, is a train wreck. It's a train wreck.
Yeah.
It is so hard to watch. It is so angering at times, because they're trying to make you feel things that just make no sense. Like when Rose, at the end of the movie, Finn is trying to sacrifice himself by hurling himself into this giant laser that's, gonna be the end basically of this entire rebellion, and she comes out of nowhere, bashes him out of the way so that he doesn't sacrifice himself, doesn't blow up the laser. Yeah. She doesn't blow up the laser. They both just end up standing in front of this massive army where presumably they should just get destroyed. They don't, somehow, inexplicably. And we're supposed to, and then they kiss as explosions are going off in the background of their friends on the verge of dying, and he's like, "Why did you do that? Why did you stop me?" And she's like, "I saved you."
Yeah,
and
no, her line is, "We're not going to win this war by killing the things we hate, but by embracing the things we love."
Right.
And while she's doing that, their friends are blowing up in the background.
Yeah. Rose obviously has not studied the history of warfare very well, because usually killing the people that you hate is how you win wars, not loving them to death or loving your friends to death. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
So it's just a horrible, horrible scene. And there are several. The casino scene. There's a scene where they're liberating animals. It's like an animal rights part of the movie.
That was terrible.
The idea that they just stumble across this code breaker. They're trying to break this code, and they stumble across this code breaker while they're in prison. It's not even the person that they're looking for. That whole line of the movie, the way they wrote that is awful. The female admiral, not Leia, but the other one,
Admiral Gender Studies, I think is her name.
She is brutal, and she's so smug, and you just like, I'm sorry, the Leia almost getting blown out into space, and yet somehow magically being able to propel herself back into the spaceship. I mean, there are so many parts of that movie that are trash.
So, okay. So the way
it has to be in the bottom four. They have to all be separated out. These movies are all bad. The other movies are not bad. These are all bad movies.
So, okay. So I justify my entire list by it's filmmaking is art, right? So there's an emotional component to all of this stuff. How does this piece of art make you feel? How does a song make you feel when you hear it? What are you feeling when you look at a painting or something like that? So most of how I rate movies and stuff is not necessarily based on logic, as terrible as that sounds, but based on emotion. So how did I feel coming out of this? And in a lot of cases, I felt a certain way, which we'll get to when we talk about the next movie on my list. And then I actually have to figure out why I felt that way. And it takes me a little bit to come to the realization. With The Last Jedi, I felt angry, but at least I felt something. Okay. With The Last Jedi, I felt nothing. With the Rise of Skywalker, I felt nothing. With Last Jedi, I felt angry. So at least I felt something. So I had some stuff going on in this movie. And I've always said since day one that I broke the movie up into three storylines. The one with Kylo Ren and Rey and Luke Skywalker, which I think was really good. That has all of those scenes that you said were like some of the best stuff in Star Wars. I would agree with you. The whole Luke Skywalker force projection thing, I thought that was super cool, right? The B story, which was the Poe and Leia and on the spaceship with Admiral Gender Studies, that to me was like, meh. And then the Finn and Rose stuff was so terrible. So it's like, to me, I think I'm mentally able to just like put that into like the Jar Jar Binks camp, where I just like, I'm just not even going to pay attention to it. And what I'm left with is like some pretty cool concepts and some cool stuff. So I think that way of looking at it is why, to me, it raises a little bit above Rise of Skywalker. But let's move on to the next one here. What is your number 6?
My number 6 is Rogue One.
Oh, sweet. We are on the same boat here.
Yeah, my number 6 is Rogue One. So for me, 9, as I said previously, 9 is sort of the start of movies for me, episode 9, of being what I consider to be good movies in the Star Wars universe. I actually do think this movie is a good movie. I just think that, and I think there's a lot of redeeming things about it. I think it's actually a pretty... I like how it's about people who are not part of the normal Star Wars saga. It's not about Luke and Han Solo and Anakin Skywalker. It's about like regular people, pretty much, just regular soldiers fighting the battle for freedom here in this, and it's about them mostly, and I like that. Some of the battle scenes in it are pretty good. It's got kind of a sort of a modern warfare type vibe about it, which I think is really cool. World War II movie almost is kind of how it comes across. And so I like that too. The problem I have with it is that the characters are just not there's just not much to them that's likable. You don't really learn that much about them. You can't remember any of their names when you watch the movie. That's a problem. If you can't remember the characters' names, it means you don't really care that much about them. how many times have you and I talked about this and said that the robot is the most human character of all the characters, and the one that you care the most about when they dies?
Yeah, K2SO. When he was getting, spoiler alert, shot up, I was like, oh no, but like that was not the case when the rest of the characters were getting obliterated. It was just like, oh, okay.
And so I think that the issue is it's actually, and I've seen it now several times. The first time I watched it, I really didn't care that much for it. Second time I watched it, I thought, it's maybe a little better than I thought. It's actually grown on me a little bit. But it's still just I don't feel that much for the characters. I kind of like the story. I just wish I felt more for the characters.
Yeah.
And it's not even the acting. It's just the writing, the way they wrote it. They didn't do a good job of getting to these characters in a very deep way, and I think that's the problem.
Yeah, so to me, like, I remember watching this, and this was the second movie of the new Disney era of Star Wars movies, and I remember like walking out of the theaters, and I was like, why didn't I like that? Like, I was seriously like perplexed. Like, why don't I have like this visceral reaction? And it took me a while to kind of break it down, but it's exactly what you were talking about. It was like the lack of character development. There was no real central like theme going on that I thought was a total missed opportunity of like, they set up these pieces of like, the rebellion that plays by the rules versus one that like we don't play by the rules, but they didn't really expand on that at all. And then, like, when the character started to bite it towards the end, it was just like, all right, how much more of this movie is there left? But like outside of that, it does have a lot of good stuff going for it. It was definitely felt like a Star Wars movie in terms of the way it looked, even the humor, because that was one thing that we didn't talk about with The Last Jedi, but their attempts at humor were just terrible. The attempts at humor in Rogue One, which were a little bit more sparse, were actually a little bit more on point when it came to kind of Star Wars humor. So all of the elements were there. It was just like, it felt like it was a movie that was written by a robot or something like that, and not a person with a heart. And I think that that's kind of the component that's missing, that you do find in probably the top half of our movies here.
Yeah, the other thing, and we've talked about this too many times when we've talked about these Star Wars movies, is that I think we both agree that one of the reasons people like it so much, Episode 1, is that the ending of that movie is really great.
Yeah.
It's a great, great ending.
Right.
Where Darth Vader is just like plowing through people, and
you see him at most Darth Vader-y you've ever seen.
Yeah, and it transitions really well to the next movie in the series chronologically, and it just does it's a really nice... I think it's just the ending is such a cool ending that you walk out of it thinking like that was really great. When in reality, it
was a trick. It was a little sleight of hand.
It wasn't. Now, if they and I actually, reflecting back on it, it was really great what they did with Darth Vader in that scene. But I just wish they had done that like 2 other times in the movie. Like I wish they had done that like 3 times in that movie to varying degrees.
we could have separate videos where we like fan fix these movies, because I've had discussions, I'm sure with you, about like how like Rogue One could have been so much better if they just like expanded certain components of it. But
yeah, Rogue One could have been great. It could have been
really could have been.
It could have been one of the top 2 or 3.
It could have been the
whole thing, but the writing just wasn't good enough in terms of the character development.
Yeah, so it's like, and the best characters in the movie were like side characters. Like the girl's dad was like kind of cool. Yep. And then like the bad guy that wears like white, he was pretty cool, but they're just like, they're over here. We got to talk about the guy that was a pilot or something. I don't even remember. So, all right. Number 5 on my list is Solo, a Star Wars story. I had low expectations going into this. So again, kind of context-wise, this was the movie that came out on the heels of The Last Jedi. Last Jedi made me mad. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes controversy with Solo. They had directors that filmed like the majority of the movie. They got fired. They brought in Ron Howard to kind of helm the rest of it. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a mess. So I went into it with low expectations, which might actually account for why I have it ranked as high as I do, because I know some people don't hold it this high. But like I was like thoroughly entertained, and like I remember leaving the theater with like a smile on my face, and I was like, yeah, that was kind of like a Guardians of the Galaxy type movie. I thought the guy that played Han Solo was pretty good. Donald Glover as I'm spacing on his name, was fantastic. And Lando. Yeah, sorry, folks. Donald Glover as Lando was fantastic. There was some cringeworthy parts in it, like the feminist robot trying to lead a rebellion was a little, not that great. But like all in all, it was a fun movie.
I don't know. I didn't mind that.
You kind of see like the little the underground of kind of Star Wars in certain aspects of it. Him being like a mud trooper during the Empire Wars was pretty cool. You've never really seen that kind of a part in Star Wars before. So like all in all, I thought that this was a very fun movie. It didn't have the biggest heart to it. It was like just kind of like a Guardians of the Galaxy type movie. But like, I still thought it was a very fun kind of popcorn movie. So I don't really have a bunch of knocks against it. So just by default, it kind of comes in at number 5 for me. Where do you have it ranked?
Yeah, I actually really like Solo. I did not have I had super low expectations. I didn't even really want to see it when I heard about it, because I just thought, why would I want to watch a movie about this? This just didn't seem interesting to me at all.
Right. Like they could only ruin the character. They're not going to enhance them.
Yeah, exactly. But after I watched it in the theaters, I really liked it. But then since then, I've watched it 2 more times. As part of at least one of those times was as part of like a whole watch of the entire Star Wars series. And when I watched it that time, I really liked it. I mean, I went from thinking this is like pretty good to I really like this movie. I think this movie is actually great for a lot of the reasons I like some of the other movies that are at the top of the list. So for me, this one actually, and this kind of surprised me a little bit when I was putting this together, but for me, this is my number 3.
Oh, nice.
This is my number 3. So I actually really, really liked this movie. I thought Woody Harrelson was great.
I love Woody Harrelson.
And I thought it was the most, it's funny, it's called Solo, a Star Wars story, so that people who don't watch Star Wars would understand it's a Star Wars story. But I actually thought it's fitting because it is the most Star Wars-like of the new movies in a lot of ways. Like, it's very much in the same vein as the original couple of movies, and so I really liked it for that reason, and it's number 3 for me.
Okay, all right, yeah, I could respect that. Like I said, I had low expectations, came out above, so yeah, okay, I respect that. Number 5, what do you got for number 5?
All right, so this is gonna be my most controversial pick.
Oh God,
and people don't like this, that I have this opinion of it. But my number 5 is episode 4.
I knew it. I was writing it already.
And yeah, and the reason for that is I actually think for its time, and so in this way, it kind of depends on how you want to judge these movies. For its time, it was a great movie. It was exceptional for its time. However, if we're gonna judge them all together, and we're not going to, give it a handicap because it was made in the 1970s. I just think it's by far the most dated, not surprising, of the movies. When you watch it, it seems like you're watching something that's ancient. It just looks really old.
Yeah, certain elements don't necessarily fit with movies that come out in the future.
It seems really out of place. The whole concept of a Jedi is really different in that movie compared to all the other movies that come after it. It's almost like they're samurais in that movie.
Yeah.
But in the future they become way more powerful and able to do all sorts. And so when you watch the lightsaber scene in that movie between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi, it just looks like you're watching, 2 senior citizens battle it out over the last roll at the senior home, like it's it's not, it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit for me at all. And it just seems really outdated, and it looks like something from the 1970s all the way through. And so I can't, I get too distracted when I watch the movie with all of those kinds of things. The story is good, the acting is good, it's a good movie, but it just doesn't do anything better than the other movies, I think, that are higher up on the list. Even though I understand it's kind of cheating because the other movies all drew from this movie.
Sure.
And I fully understand that. But what does this movie do better than the movies that we haven't talked about? And I think the answer is nothing.
Okay, so I have New Hope listed as number 4 here. I have it higher than Solo: A Star Wars Story. I generally agree with what you have to say, especially the thing about like how people have a special place in their heart for this because it was the original. I completely understand that, but I'm a person that likes Terminator 2 better than Terminator, even though Terminator was the first, it was the original, it led to all of the other ones. I think that the other movies that I have ahead of this, just have certain components that they do better. I understand that this kind of plowed the path, but I think other people rode that path a little bit better. Those are my 1, 2, and 3. You are right. There are certain parts of it, even like Leia kind of having a royalty, inflection in her voice, that she kind of loses in the rest of the movies is a little weird. But outside of that, like, it's still number 4. It's number 5 on your list. It's still a great movie. It's very streamlined. It's probably the most streamlined of any of the movies. It's just like there's like 3 settings essentially. Tatooine, the Death Star, and then in space around the Death Star. So it's a very streamlined movie. It's very to the point. It's the hero's journey. Like, there's a lot of things going for it. Obviously, it resonated with people so much that it spawned the empire that is Star Wars. So I'm not going to like knock it. I think there's a way more good things in going for it than there is bad things by a long shot. So I have the utmost respect for this movie, but I think there are still 3 movies that do things better. So that's why it's number 4 for me. What's number 4 for you?
Number 4 for me is Return of the Jedi. Number 4 for me is Return of the Jedi. So I like Return of the Jedi a lot. In fact, as a little kid, that was probably the one I watched more than any of the other movies. It's a fun movie, and there's really nothing bad about it at all. But I think that there's not much character development in that movie because the characters have already been kind of developed in the first 2, and so it's just kind of like characters you already know playing out a slightly different plot than what we'd already seen. And so to me, it's like a really good third movie in a trilogy. Like, I think that's what it is. But I think it's really hard for the third movie in any trilogy to be the best movie of the trilogy, because it's just, by the time you get to the third movie, you've already been through a lot, and it's just difficult to top that. If it's a popular movie and it's the third one, it's really tough to do. And so for me, it's not the same kind of emotional things in it, I think, and as some of the others. And I think also the character development piece to it, that's why I put it there. But it's really good. I mean, I like it a lot.
So to me, this is like, this also was probably my favorite growing up. It had a lot of stuff going for it. Just the pulp fiction aspect of it, of just seeing like, a jungle planet and all the things going on with that, and the Ewoks. That's a touchy subject for some, and like their battle against the Empire was like super cool to watch. And the rescue mission of Han Solo at the beginning in Jabba's palace was just it's just movie magic. Like, me as a young kid watching that, it's like, how did they do that? It just looks like they're literally in an alien palace. It's amazing what they did. What makes this rank so high, in my opinion, is that kind of final third of the movie, with Luke Skywalker and the confrontation of the Emperor and Darth Vader, making his decision and all of that stuff. I thought the emotional weight of that was probably not rivaled by any other movie. So to me, just that, like those scenes alone just like in the final part of that movie, that rises it above like your just typical sci-fi movie. Like that has some emotional weight to it, in my opinion. Some of the other aspects, you're right. It's just like, oh, what's Han Solo doing? Let's have him, attacking the shield generator. Why not? So there are certain aspects of that make it a little bit lower than my number one pick. But yeah, like that kind of final confrontation and the way that ended was like, that's the way you end a trilogy, like not Rise of Skywalker, where it's just like, I'm a Skywalker now, woohoo! Like, no, that's not a way to end a trilogy. This is the way you end it. The original one did it so well, and again, that's why it became this cornerstone of pop culture. So to me, Return of the Jedi is in number 2. Yep. Number 3 for me is The Force Awakens. Oh my gosh, people watching this and realizing that we haven't put this final of the sequel trilogy movies in there, and the fact that for both of us it rises above the level of A New Hope is probably setting some people's hair on fire. When I break it down by giving it a 0 to 10.0 scale, A New Hope and The Force Awakens are like virtually tied in my opinion. But The Force Awakens, I thought, was, especially because this was like the first movie out the gate for the Disney era, I thought it was such a good way to kind of reset the table here. A lot of people say that it's just like a rehash of A New Hope. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, but you have to remember these movies are like 40 years apart. So the idea of like a film franchise rebooting is like forgivable in my opinion. But they did set the pieces really well. I thought, outside of, one thing I'll totally hold against it, which is like another Death Star. Like, give me a break. So that's my one big gripe against it. But outside of that, I thought the characters were set up nicely. I thought Rey was pretty compelling. People call her a Mary Sue, but she did have some drawbacks. She was afraid of leaving her planet, so I don't really buy the whole Mary Sue thing. And then like the rest of the characters I thought had some stuff going for them. Poe Dameron, I was very interested to see like what he was going to do in this film franchise. Finn, the ex-stormtrooper, what's going to happen with him. And then outside of that, like the bad guy, Kylo Ren, I thought was very compelling of a bad guy. People didn't like him as soon as he took his helmet off, and you realize that he's just like an angsty, 20-year-olds or something like that. But I thought that level to his character actually made him more interesting, and he wasn't just like a faceless goon bad guy. So I was, to me, The Force Awakens was setting the table, and I thought they set it up really, really nicely. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, the rest of the sequel trilogy just served to just knock the pieces off the board and flip the table at the end. But I thought like The Force Awakens came out the gate very strong. So to me, it's number 3. I could watch that movie any day of the week.
Yeah. So it's interesting. There are a couple things. The biggest knock on this movie when people talk about it is that it is exactly the same as A New Hope. That it's just A New Hope. And when you watch it, there's no doubt about it. And there are certain things that they did in the movie that were totally unnecessary to do. That if they had just made slight tweaks to it, would have felt less like A New Hope. For example, why did Rey have to be from a desert planet? Like, why couldn't they just make her from a jungle planet? It could have been the exact same, except she's in a jungle, and you would have felt
apparently.
Like
I totally agreed. The original, and I'm not trying to justify anything or whatever, give them a pass on this, but apparently one of the original ideas was that she was going to be from a garbage planet.
Yeah,
like that would have been super cool, and it would have changed it up. Sense. Yeah, totally.
Right, and so that was to me. You said the Death Star thing. Like, why did they have to make it quite so similar? With that said, and two points to respond to that. The first is, anyone who watches lots of movies and really thinks about movies and really watches movies realizes that basically all movies are a derivative of like the same several
9 stories, right?
Yeah. I mean, and they're all just derivatives of like biblical stories, basically. So, I mean, if you really want to break it down like that, I mean, most stories are either like some derivative of Shakespeare or the Bible or some like epic narrative, and it's the same story over and over and over again. I mean, do people ever say when they watch romantic comedies, "Oh my gosh, like this is just like all the other"? Every romantic comedy is the exact same of every other romantic comedy. They
Sure.
don't. There is no difference. It's the same story, and so. For some reason, it really bothered people with this, and I get it in that one sense, but the second point,
it's a lack of creativity. I could see that. Like,
yes,
like
without
you have
question.
an infinite universe of things. Like, yeah, just like your example, like have her come from a jungle planet or something like that. Like, let's see something different, not just endless sand dunes again. But
and that's the thing, is actually I don't think it's quite as similar as people think. It's
Agreed.
just it's so easy to focus on the similarities because they're so striking when they happen. But the story is actually not as similar as people think. Kylo Ren kills Han Solo in this movie. There's no comparison to that in any of the other movies that's quite the same as that, where you have what looks like he's going to be redeemed. It looks like that's where we're heading, and actually he just kills a main character. When do main characters ever die in these movies?
Yeah,
Almost
I mean,
never.
In context, I would say the closest thing to that would be in A New Hope, and it was Darth Vader killing Obi-Wan. Now, Obi-Wan, when you originally watched that, he's more of a less a side character, but if you're watching it in order, like he is a main character and he gets offed.
Yeah, I guess that's true if you're watching it with that lens, but because he doesn't feel like a main character in the series generally, like from that point forward, obviously he's not. You don't really think of him in that same way. He feels like a side character, but even still, it's not just a main character. It's that the Hollywood way of dealing with, Kylo Ren is that Kylo Ren redeems himself, and he listens to the appeal of his father. Not that he slaughters him. And, like that to me was a difference. Just the whole concept of the stormtrooper, like that Finn's whole storyline in that movie is very unique, right? Like when do we ever see that kind of thing happening in other movies?
Totally squandered though in the sequels.
it is totally squandered in episode 8. They killed Finn. He was a horrible character in that movie, but he was great in 7. And then just to have Rey, I thought was a great lead character. I thought she was great. I really liked her. I thought she was very likable.
Yeah, all of my problems, with the sequel trilogy have basically nothing to do with The Force Awakens. It's just that all of these strands that were interesting to me were just totally squandered. I thought that the Rey character was going to be conflicted and might, stray more towards the dark side. They set up little hints of that in that movie, and it just didn't go anywhere. So I won't hold all of those things against The Force Awakens, but like to me, it's just like it's hard to hold that one up as high when you know that the future of it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, and just two quick other things. The other thing that I would argue is that yes, it's just like A New Hope, but it is literally better in every single way, objectively, than the New Hope, and that of A New Hope. And that's the thing. Like, can anyone point to anything about A New Hope that is actually better than that movie? And the answer is no. There's nothing better.
Other than the fact that they did it first.
Other than the fact that they did it first, which is what I said. I totally understand that within the context of this whole, of time just in general and what cinema was and all of that. What A New Hope was a very historic movie and fantastic. But if you're looking at it just objectively, if you just took a person who's never seen either movie and you didn't tell them anything about it and you just made them objectively watch each one and said, which one do you think is better? They would choose episode 7 every single time because it's objectively it's just a better movie in every way. And so and again, it's not dated, so that helps. Some of the scenes in that are awesome. The beginning scene in that movie, the first 15 minutes of that movie is so good. It is really, really good. And that battle scene toward the end with Rey in the snow, and it's kind of dark. And
agreed. One of the best lightsaber fights.
Yeah, it's really good. And so there's some really, really good. And it's the most. To me, it's the most. It feels so Star Wars-like. Just the interaction between the three characters, and it's this saga, but not this big grand thing. It's like this big grand thing is happening, but you're still, you feel like these three main characters and that you're with them along this ride. And I think it has such a great feel to it. I love watching that movie. I never get tired of watching it. And so I love that movie. So to me, it's number 2.
Number 2. All right. So then that leaves one movie that looks like we're in agreement here as our number 1, Empire Strikes Back. This is probably the top of the list for, I don't know, like a good portion of people that make rankings. Empire Strikes Back. This is just probably just straight up most visceral Star Wars sci-fi movie, like out of all of the Star Wars movies, but it's just like a great movie, period. It's not a great Star Wars movie. It's a great movie, period.
It's a great movie.
And again, like, and I mentioned this before with one of the with Return of the Jedi, but just like the movie magic aspects of this, like when you're watching it and the snow walkers, the AT-ATs, are like walking towards the base, and you've got your ships that they're out there to take them down. Like, you're watching that as a kid, you're just like, how are they doing this? Like, it really seems like they're on some distant snow planet. And then it's incredible on that level. And then not only that, but just some of the real mystical elements of what makes like a core Star Wars movie are seated in this movie. Yeah. Like, I don't think that there's actually anyone using the Force in A New Hope. I think Obi-Wan makes a noise behind some stormtroopers at one point. Luke is able to kind of use the Force to know when to hit like the shoot the rockets button at the end, but like outside of that, there's not really any Force going on. So like all of those elements are laid down in this. Luke Skywalker gets to Yoda's planet, Dagobah, and he's looking for this great Jedi leader. And he's like, what is this stupid guy, like bug thing, this little reptile animal is like screwing with all my stuff. And it turns out that he is the Jedi leader, because it's not, you don't need outward strength and all of this. You need strength of mind and all of that to be like one with the Force. Luminous beings are we is the line that is in this movie. So like all the depth and mythology of Star Wars is seated in this movie. Everything stems from this movie. Yeah. And then just from like pure action, like sci-fi perspective too, it's just got some of the best stuff of all Star Wars is in this movie.
Yeah. It's a great movie. I mean, it just is a great movie. There's really nothing bad about it at all. It's 40 years old. Just about 40 years old.
Jeez.
And it doesn't feel like it at all.
No,
I mean, it's so good. And what I really also like about it too, and when you have trilogies, it's often true of the second movie to some extent, but it's a great movie in the sense that it doesn't end with like a storybook ending. It's very like, how are they gonna get out of this situation right here? It's a great ending, I thought. And so it's just a great movie all the way around. There's a reason why everybody I don't know if everybody would say this is the best one, but I think that's by far the majority opinion on this. So there's a reason for it. Everybody loves it because it is just objectively across the board a great movie. It's also the first movie where Darth Vader feels like Darth Vader.
Sure.
Because the first one, he doesn't really feel like anything.
He's just kind of a stormtrooper with black armor.
Exactly.
Instead,
He's just like the head stormtrooper.
And he does choke somebody with the Force. I guess that might be the biggest use of the Force in that movie.
But that's kind of it. I mean, it's not a very, again, I really do believe that A New Hope is kind of an overrated movie, looking back on it. But The Empire Strikes Back, you're right. It's the beginning of what we think of when we think of Star Wars. It's true power with the Jedis and the Force and all of that. It's Darth Vader is like really this ominous figure looming over everything. The universe is huge in that movie. They take you to all sorts of different places. There's all kinds of different storylines to it. It's great. I love it.
It's the only one of my top 4 that doesn't rely on having a Death Star in it too. So that's pretty cool.
It doesn't. That's very true.
All right. So
I don't know
list...
why they all do that. Why did they do? They all did that. I mean, even
come up with
3.
anything
Why
else.
did they do that in 3? It's just such a bizarre. It would have been so easy to come up with anything else, but they didn't. Yeah,
but they didn't.
Very strange.
So our lists aren't that far apart. I think Solo, you having it at 3 and me having it at 5 is probably the furthest apart of any of our picks here. And I don't dog you on that one. I know that you are upset with my putting the Phantom Menace over Attack of the Clones, so that might be, point-wise, that might be the furthest apart between our picks here. But I'm very curious to see what other people have to say. Feel free to put a comment of, like, why the hell are you guys talking about Star Wars and the Stopping Socialism? I'm expecting a few comments like that, but I would love to see if your list is similar to ours, differs from ours. Put it in the comments below. Justin, do you want to cap this off with anything about anything?
Look, if you've made it this far into this episode,
congratulations.
Yeah, you really are a champ. Look, again, going back to what we said at the beginning of this, I mean, sometimes you just got to, like, the last couple of months have been brutal for all of us. I think sometimes it's good just to step back and just remember there are other parts to life than politics and all of that. So
that's poetic. That is poetic.
I think that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to have some therapy, Star Wars therapy.
Let's end on that. So don't be too hard on us in the comments.
Please.
I'm just kind of curious to see what your opinions are on that. But that will do it for us. StoppingSocialism.com, Stopping Socialism on Facebook, Stopping Socialism TV on Facebook, Stopping Socialism TV on YouTube. Subscribe, write a review for us on whatever, that'd be great. Also on pretty much everything. Instagram, I think we have a Twitter account, although we don't use socialist Twitter anymore. Hopefully Parler comes back. But yeah, any way that you want to be able to follow us, you should be able to do that. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you later.